Welcome to Lesson 2 of Module 3. Today we're going to look at mitigating malware infection, where we will be highlighting ways enterprise and online users can prevent threats on their network. The objectives for today's lesson will be to examine some emerging security solutions for online users and business, highlight the need for strong hardware authentication on end devices, explore the concept of passwords, policy, and biometrics, and explore the concept of virtual private networks. And lastly, we got a great demo on installing a VPN on a Linux machine and examining the traffic on a VPN on Wireshark. Cyber attacks have grown and evolved with technology over time. We saw in our last lesson that there are increased numbers of planned attacks on business from the threat reports. Clearly, companies need to put better security in place to protect their resources. So how can cybersecurity companies make this work? By huge investment and focusing on security technology that can be adopted to stay ahead of malicious threats and malware. Hardware authentication is a security approach that generally involves a form of token to be presented by the user before access is granted. In most cases, this will involve the user presenting a password. In a more sophisticated system, there is an extra layer of security. This involves the user having a unique device, such as a mobile phone, which could generate a unique cryptographic code that must be inputted along with a password before access can be granted to the user. So, what are these extra layers of security that can be added to the system? These include two-factor authentication or 2FA, which is electronic authentication such as mobile devices to approve the user on web pages and applications. Multi-factor authentication or MFA, electronic authentication mostly in areas where high security is required, such as in banking environments and government agencies. And then you have single sign-on or SSO, electronic authentication to authenticate the user on web pages and applications. Other forms of authentication involve IAM, Identity and Access Management, electronic authentication mostly used in a sensitive area where the user has to be identified, such as airports and big tech companies. PAM, Privileged Access Management, electronic authentication mostly used in the enterprise network to manage the accounts of users and structure who has permission to resources. IGA, Identity Governance and Admin, electronic authentication used to manage the information technology operations such as the applications that control the user's data. And DAG, Data Access Governance, electronic authentication used in business to help find and protect sensitive, unstructured users' data. In an ideal world, adding these sorts of extra layers of security greatly increases the chances of a more secure network. You might think that end devices can't store biometric data, but with the use of an electronic authentication application such as sign-in, they can. Data users can use their fingerprint to authenticate a session on web pages or applications. By the way, biometrics is considered the least secure when it comes to securing devices. In the case of smartphones, there has been an incorporation of electronic authentication to make mobile authentication possible. The smartphone usually uses an MFA, multi-factor authentication, which combines biometrics and passwords to improve security of that device. Smartphones' hardware contributes to the benefit of security. On the hardware storage, we have the Web Authentication module installed. This enables WebAuthn, a core component of the FIDO2, a web-based API that allows users to use it with web browsers and other applications. Big organizations often tend to incorporate their web-based application program interface into their hardware if it is not pre-built. API security is important because businesses use APIs to connect services and to transfer data. And so, a hacked API can lead to a data breach. To improve security, businesses combine biometrics and passwords to improve the security of that device when accessing any application program with the use of API on their network. It is important to note all these extra layers of security do not guarantee total protection, but they will make it harder for an unauthorized user to access the system. Did you know that passwords were one of the first forms of security introduced to end devices, where the user with an authorization has a set of keywords to get them access to the system? A password login was first introduced to computer systems in the early 1960s at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Just as we saw in our demo of the brute force attack, passwords are very crackable and don't guarantee full security. However, implementing good password policies will help reduce the chances of the computer system being breached. Password policies are a set of rules which were created to increase computer security by encouraging users to create reliable, secure passwords and then store and utilize them properly. In the last module of our course, we will explore the NIST framework in depth, but in this lesson, we'll just examine the structure of a password policy. Before highlighting the password recommendations of the NIST framework, let's examine passwords a bit more closely to fully understand the reason why the framework is very important. Here are the possible permutations for a threat actor to gain access to a user's account. Having seen this, do you think it is a good idea to adhere to the NIST password policy framework? The NIST password policy framework includes some very useful recommendations, such as increase the length of a password used on the system. 8 characters and above is recommended. Use a complex password that is not easily guessable. Use special characters such as uppercase characters, lowercase characters, non-alphabetic characters, numbers, and others in match format to increase the complexity of the password. Don't reuse old passwords, as the chances are that your previous password would have been compromised. Don't publicly share a password to a personal and confidential account. And avoid the repetition of characters sequentially within the password. Biometrics can be seen as a physical or even behavioral characteristic which is stored digitally to identify a user on a system or network. Some good examples of biometrics are the use of facial recognition, fingerprints, and a voice authenticator. Biometrics does provide a sense of confidence to users in that they know that access will only be granted with that specific personal data. A biometric identifier is related to human characteristics which are derived from the following. Fingerprints. Data derived from printing a digital copy to a device, just like photocopying. Facial recognition. A capture of the facial structure using machine learning. Can be used on photos and video machines to help detect a threat in a crowd of people in a video recording or in real time. Gestures. With the use of machine learning, users could train a system to recognize gestures like hand gestures to gain access to a system. Voice. Voice characteristics using voice recognition to identify users and authenticate users, mostly in a sophisticated enterprise. E-signatures. Digital signatures have grown in popularity where documents can now be signed electronically. And DNA. DNA scans are used primarily in law enforcement to identify suspects and also in an area where there is a high security standard to be maintained. Here is a table highlighting some of the advantages and disadvantages of passwords and biometrics in security. We need to move along as we have quite a long demo in this lesson, so feel free to snap and save this to look at later. The firewall is a highly recommended solution for businesses that want to control the flow of traffic within their network. A firewall helps to make networks more resistant to network attacks. It monitors incoming and outgoing network traffic And with the set permits, it blocks and allows data packets. A firewall helps to make networks more resistant to network attacks. It monitors incoming and outgoing network traffic. And with the set permits, it blocks and allows data packets. All the traffic that flows through the firewall will be inspected with the access control policy, which is configured on it. There are several benefits that could be derived from using a firewall in a network. It helps to prevent exposure of the host, storage, or even running application within a network. It could also help restrict all unwanted users or traffic from accessing the network. Another benefit is that it prevents malicious data from running on a server. Firewalls help to reduce the security management complexity. It is the first line of defense in the network. Firewalls are categorized into different types depending on their uses. Each type is specially made to perform a certain task. Let us explore these types. Packet filtering, stateless firewalls, used in line with a router in an enterprise network to help set traffic on the layer 3, network layer, and layer 4, transport layer, information regarding the OSI model. Stateful firewalls allow or block based on the kind of protocol and port associated with the traffic, mostly used in a secured environment, and inspect traffic on layer 4, which is the transport layer, and layer 5, the session in the OSI model. Application gateway firewalls, also referred to as proxy firewalls, that filter information at layer 3, network, 4, transport, 5, session, and 7, application in the OSI model. A host-based firewall is a computer or server with firewall software running on it. Transparent firewall filters IP traffic between two bridged interfaces. And a hybrid firewall is a combination of various firewall types. A VPN is a virtual private network that creates a safe encrypted tunneling connection. Online users are most encouraged to use a VPN connection to ensure end-to-end encryption of data during transmission. A VPN does provide a certain level of anonymity online, but this is not foolproof. With the use of certified VPN applications, users can increase the chances of preventing a threat actor from reading data sent on the network due to the encryption used if the Wi-Fi network is breached. Do you remember the IPsec? Yes, the VPN works with the use of IPsec tunneling to encrypt the end-to-end connection. In today's demonstration, we will be installing a VPN connection from the CLI, Command Line Interface, to build on the knowledge of the Linux command line. After the installation, we will be connecting our VPN to examine VPN traffic on Wireshark. For this demo, we're going to be talking about VPNs. And we're going to be showing you how to install a VPN on the virtual Ubuntu machine. And try to visit the unsecure web pages and analyze the traffic we get from the VPN connection on our Ubuntu. So in order not to delay this video, let's get into the installment process for the VPN on our Ubuntu. So we're just going to jump into our Ubuntu machine. And while we're on here, we'll be going onto our terminal to build on our previous knowledge. We had the command line interface, CLI. So just before we actually comment on our terminal, we need to do one more thing first. So we need to go on the web browser to actually register and sign up for the VPN service. In this case, because we're actually using the VPN, we're going to be using the VPN called Proton VPN. Now, the Proton VPN is a unique VPN application and is embraced in the IT industry and is quite sophisticated but very easy to use. Okay, so on the terminal, we go to Google. And while on Google, you type in Proton VPN. and search for that. Okay, so now we see this is the URL that takes us to Proton VPN, and click on it. And now we're on the home page of Proton VPN. So what we need to do in this case is to sign up. So we can go to the sign up section. And then we can see the service is a free service. They have a basic service and plus service, and they have a visionary service. And then the free service. Let's expand that to see what the free service entails. So on the free service, we have one VPN connection and access to servers in 3 countries. And the speed we would be getting is going to be at a medium speed. And we wouldn't be getting any logs or ads while in the service. So if we go to the basic plan, we can see it's about 4 euros per month. And for the plus service, 8 euros. And for the visionary service, 24 euros. So for this lesson, we're going to be using the free service. If you want to be using this VPN after the lesson, please do stick to it. Okay, so we can simply just click on Get Free. And you can sign up now. In this case, I won't be signing up because I already have an account with Proton VPN. In your case, you simply need to put in your username, put in your password, and make sure you confirm your password. And make sure you confirm your email address. And simply create an account. In my own case, I simply just log in, and you should be on the same page when you go through the sign up. Okay, so I just log in here, and I'm logged in at the moment. You can see my username is Edwin4Shaw. And that's the basic steps we need to do to make sure you note your username and your password, because that's what we're going to be using to log in on the terminal. Okay, so now that this step is done, we can simply just jump back again to our terminal and type the following commands. Okay, the first one will be to get some updates. We're going to be using the sudo apt-get. Upgrade. And putting in our password. Enter and yes. And we just wait for that to unpack. And when it's done, we can run the next command. Now, what this command does is get the upgrade for our system. Okay, so this would be installing all the new patches that we need for our system, for the operating system to be fully functional. So we're giving them quite a while, because this basically downloads all the components it's missing from the current Linux distribution. So depending on the speed of your internet, this might take a while. In this case, I'm actually going to put a pause to the video and come back when it's done. So at the moment, you can see my upgrade is done and completed, and I have the latest upgrade for the current Linux distribution. So I'm going to clean up the screen, and at the moment, I need to run another command by using the sudo. I'm just going to paste and explain what these commands do basically. So they allow you to download and get the repository public key of the Proton VPN on your system. If you see the command, you get the apprentice because we actually get the repository public key online from Proton VPN. And if you look, we're taking the public key now. And the public key is going to help us with the encryption on our system. So we take the public key and we add this public key to our system. And pressing enter. And now we see we get a reply. Okay. It means the step has been executed properly. The reason why you might not see more replies on the terminal is because the step has been repeated. I've already downloaded these repositories on my system. But in your case, you might actually have more output than this. Okay, so when the whole process is done, simply just wait and put in the next comment or command. Okay, so for the next command, we're going to be using the sudo command again. And this time around, we want to add in the repository to our physical machine. Now, the first command we're going to run is to get our public key so that it is added to our system. In this case, we need to add the repository to our Linux system. So simply using the sudo and add the repository by putting these links to get the repository from Proton VPN and enter. It'll actually get all of the repositories and add them to our local system. Now, this might actually take a while, depending on the network speed you have now. The reason why it's quite fast for me is because I've already done this step previously. Okay, so now that it's done, we would be using another command to download the Proton application to our machine. So we're using the sudo command apt-gets space and update space and time. I want to run two commands simultaneously and use the ampersand apprentice, and we simply use the sudo apt-get install Proton VPN. And these commands will get the updates for us and install the application. So simply press enter. Again, it might take a while. So if you have that step done, the next step will be for us to log into the application. Now remember, in the previous stage, we downloaded the application already, so we have it installed. So it's more like you're already on the browser and you're actually trying to log in. Now the command basically just takes Proton VPN-CLI, which is the terminal where we're actually on. So we're trying to log in with this username. And you can type enter now. In your case, this username would be different because you would be logging in as yourself, not as me, because you're going to create an account. Okay, and if you do remember, the password you used to sign up on the account is what we're going to be using next. So now I need to put in our password, and our attempt to log in has been successful. So at the moment, we're logging in on a VPN while on the terminal. You might not see any difference because we haven't actually really connected to any VPN server. So logically, the next step for us is to actually connect to a server. Now, how do we do this? before I go through these step by step, I'm actually going to show you a few commands that would help you if you're going to use this particular application on your Linux system. So on the terminal, type in the command proton vpn-cli c-help. Now, this basically shows you the list of commands that you can use. We have a -f for a fast command. I'm just going to quickly walk you through the commands we have in here. So we have a -f for the command to connect. And we have other examples to connect. So we have the command that tests the arguments we actually use when we want to connect to the point-to-points server. Now, we did disclose the point-to-point server in our notes. So I want to actually explain the Tor network. Now, in the coming lessons, I will be walking you through how to stay anonymous on the internet using a VPN and creating your own Tor address. Okay, so we've seen all of these commands. We can actually just jump back into our terminal command line and simply launch and start our server. In this case, we want to just connect to the fastest server that we have. But before then, just clear up the screen and use the command proton vpn-cli connect. Okay, so we noticed something, that there would be a pop-up that shows us the services that we're entitled to use. And we can use a free account. So just using the down arrow, you can actually see the different services. Now, what you want to note is the percentages. The reason for that is because the higher the likelihood of this being 100%, the faster the server is actually going to be. So we're going to navigate to the point where we see almost 100%. And we have the fastest server at the United States. So we can just use the duration key to choose yes or no. Okay. And now we can see all the servers present in the United States. And the last one at the bottom is a Tor network. In this case, I would recommend using a server that has about 100% because this actually shows the server will have a good bandwidth. And the upload time while connected to the server at this point is about 93%, which means there's a big chance the server would be very, very fast. Now, you should know this information is not a right-time information. So the likelihood of the server being slower when we do connect is probable. So it would be there because this information does not appear to you in real time. It's just a snapshot of the point at which you actually made a request to know which servers to connect to. So we're simply just going to connect to the US server and now access what kind of protocol we want to use. So do you want to use the UDP or do you want to use the TCP? Now, the idea about the UDP and the TCP is the TCP is more reliable. But the problem with the TCP is it contains a lot of overhead. So it makes the connection speed a little bit slower. So it's more recommended to go with the UDP. And simply click OK. And now we can see there's a connection being established. And you can see we're connecting to the server in the US using the UDP protocol. Now, if you look at the top right-hand corner, you see there is a VPN sign that pops up. Now, this means we're actually connected to a VPN. And we can test our status by using the command again, proton VPN -CLI, and this time you put in status. At the moment, we're connected on a VPN, and the connection is to a country in the United States. And this is the server name. And we're connected. Okay. And this connection is a point-to-point connection. Now, the protocol we're using with the Open VPN is the UDP protocol. Okay, so now that we know the status of the VPN, we can actually confirm to verify what IP we have. And we can do this in a couple of ways. We can do this while on the terminal. Now on the terminal, we use the command curl https://API .ivpn.net/v4/geolookup. So I'm actually going to explain what this command does in a bit. This command just interfaces with an API that we have on the internet. Now, do you remember the lesson challenge? We had a couple of lessons back where we had to check the difference between our private IP address and the public address. Now, with this one, I will simply use an API link on the internet to look up my private IP address. And I'm going to click on OK. Okay, now I get an error. And the error is 404 page not found. At the moment, it seems the API is down. So the easiest way for me to verify this is to simply go on my browser. I can just type in my IP and search that up. And just click on the first one. That should give me my IP address. At the moment, we can see this is my current IP address. And the IP address routes all the way to the US in the region of California. And we can see this is my ISP in the United States of America. So you can see from the map, this is exactly where I am. But we know for a fact how much we know at this point because we're actually using the VPN. This is us seeing the VPN working. And we can actually do a few things by simply capturing the traffic while using the VPN. So we can verify the traffic that we get from a VPN connection to encrypted. So we're going to start our Wireshark. And on Wireshark, we want to capture traffic on a certain interface. Now, to verify our interface, we can't simply just open a new terminal because we just want to close our VPN tab. So we use the command IP, and we can see the Proton VPN is working. And we can see our network interface we need to actually capture the traffic. So this is the interface that we use on our virtual box. So we simply close it. And while on the Wireshark, we need to capture traffic on this interface. ENP0S3. So click on the interface, and we can see it's beginning to capture traffic now. Not to worry, it needs to do this for our VPN. So we can see the protocol is quite different. Now, the protocol is just using an open VPN, but this is just because we're actually using a VPN connection. So we need to navigate through the web browser now. We can close this or simply go to Google again. And we need to go to a web page that we know is not secured on the browser on Google. So we're going to type testphp.vulnweb.com/login.php and search. And that is going to take us to a web page that is not secured. Now, the reason it's doing this is because we want to verify our connection has a little bit extra security. So that is why we actually use the VPN. So in the text, we simply put in our username. And I could put in Edwin. And I put in the password. This page is actually currently using an HTTP without any encryption. Now we know this page is not secure because from our previous demo, we ran a test to inspect HTTP traffic. So now we actually want to capture HTTP traffic while using our VPN. And we can see the difference the VPN actually makes on our network. So I'm going to click on Login. And we know this is not a real password and username, but the idea is we should be able to see the details of the packets if the VPN wasn't using any encryption. Okay, so now this step is done. We've successfully used the username and password on the URL. So we can just close this and head back again to our Wireshark and just stop the capture. If we inspect the whole package we actually captured while on the Wireshark, we'll see that one thing that really stands out, it's very obvious to us, is the protocol being used. Now, if we scroll down from the beginning to the end, we'll notice the protocol being used is just an open VPN. Now, the reason for that is because every piece of data we send from our machine to the web server to go to the web page that we actually visited is encrypted from points to point. So if a threat actor was sniffing our traffic, basically they would just be getting a bunch of encrypted text. And this is how we can see the true benefit of actually having the VPN connection while we're on the network. So you can see all this traffic even while we went onto the unsecure web page. We can see we just got every traffic encrypted with random figures. Now, the reason for this is because we have the cipher keys on the machine. So now that we've seen this on Wireshark, we're just going to stop this and simply save it as our VPN capture. So we're going to save this as PCAP or PCAP now. The reason for this is because in the future, if we want to come back again to this exact same traffic, we can just load the same traffic back on the Wireshark and keep examining the traffic. Now that we have that saved, we can close this, knowing fully the reason why we want to use a weapon to ensure we have a better security on our network. Alright guys, that basically wraps up this demo.